a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. United States dollar. The United States dollar is the official currency of the United States and its territories per the United States Constitution since 1792. For most practical purposes, it is divided into 100 smaller cent units, but is occasionally divided into 1,000 mils for accounting purposes. The circulating paper money consists of Federal Reserve notes that are denominated in United States dollars. Since the suspension in 1971 of convertibility of paper U.S. currency into any precious metal, the U.S. dollar is, de facto, fiat money. As it is the most used in international transactions, the U.S. dollar is the world's primary reserve currency. Several countries use it as their official currency, and in many others it is the de facto currency, besides the United States. It is also used as the sole currency in two British overseas territories in the Caribbean, the British Virgin Islands and Turks and Caicos Islands. A few countries use the Federal Reserve notes for paper money, while still minting their own coins, or also accept US dollar coins. As of June 27, 2018, there are approximately $1.67 trillion in circulation, of which $1.62 trillion is in Federal Reserve notes. Overview. Article I, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution provides that the Congress has the power to coin money. Laws implementing this power are currently codified at Section 5112 prescribes the forms in which the United States dollars should be issued. These coins are both designated in Section 5112 as legal tender, in payment of debts. The Sacagawea dollar is one example of the copper alloy dollar. The pure silver dollar is known as the American Silver Eagle. Section 5112 also provides for the minting and issuance of other coins, which have values ranging from 1 cent to $100. These other coins are more fully described in coins of the United States dollar. The Constitution provides that a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. That provision of the Constitution is made specific by Section 331 of Title 31 of the United States Code. The sums of money reported in the statements are currently being expressed in US dollars. The US dollar may therefore be described as the unit of account of the United States. The word dollar is one of the words in the first paragraph of Section 9 of Article I of the Constitution. There, dollars is a reference to the Spanish mil dollar, a coin that had a monetary value of 8 Spanish units of currency, or reales. In 1792 the U.S. Congress passed a Coinage Act. Section 9 of that act authorized the production of various coins, including dollars or units, each to be of the value of a Spanish mil dollar as the same is now current, and to contain 371 grains and 4/16 parts of a grain of pure, or 416 grains of standard silver. Section 20 of the Act provided that the money of account of the United States shall be expressed in dollars, or units, and that all accounts in the public offices and all proceedings in the courts of the United States shall be kept and held in conformity to this regulation. In other words, this Act designated the United States dollar as the unit of currency of the United States. Unlike the Spanish mil dollar, the US dollar is based upon a decimal system of values. In addition to the dollar, the Coinage Act officially established monetary units of mil or 1,000th of a dollar, cent, or 100th of a dollar, dime or 1/10 of a dollar, and eagle or $10, with prescribed weights and composition of gold, silver, or copper for each. It was proposed in the mid-1800s that $100 be known as a union, but no union coins were ever struck and only patterns for the $50 half union exist. However, only cents are in everyday use as divisions of the dollar. Dime is used solely as the name of the coin with the value of 10 cents, while eagle and mil are largely unknown to the general public. Though mils are sometimes used in matters of tax levies, and gasoline prices are usually in the form of $x.x.x, 9 per gallon, and more, $3.599, more commonly written as $3.59, when currently issued in circulating form. Denominations equal to or less than $1 are emitted as U.S. coins, while denominations equal to or greater than $1 are emitted as Federal Reserve notes. Both $1 coins and notes are produced today. Although the note form is significantly more common, in the past, paper money was occasionally issued in denominations less than $1, and gold coins were issued for circulation up to the value of $20. The term eagle was used in the Coinage Act of 1792 for the denomination of $10, and subsequently was used in naming gold coins. Paper currency less than $1 in denomination, known as fractional currency, was also sometimes pejoratively referred to as shin plasters. In 1854, James Guthrie, then Secretary of the Treasury, proposed creating $100, $50 and $25 gold coins, which were referred to as a union, half union, and quarter union, thus implying a denomination of one union $100. Today, USD notes are made from cotton fiber paper, unlike most common paper, which is made of wood fiber. U.S. coins are produced by the United States Mint. U.S. dollar banknotes are printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and, since 1914, have been issued by the Federal Reserve. The large-sized notes, issued before 1928, measured 7.42 by. Small-sized notes, introduced that year, measure 6.14 by. When the current, smaller-sized U.S. currency was introduced, it was referred to as Philippine-sized currency, because the Philippines had previously adopted the same size for its legal currency, the Philippine peso. Etymology. In the 16th century, Count Hieronymus Schlick of Bohemia began minting coins known as Joachimsthalers, named for Joachimsthal, the valley where the silver was mined. Joachimsthaler was later shortened to the German thaler, a word that eventually found its way into Danish and Swedish as daler, Norwegian as daler and daler, Dutch as daler or dalder, Ethiopian as, Hungarian as taler, Italian as talero, and English as dollar. Alternatively, thaler is said to come from the German coin Guldengroschen, minted from the silver from Joachimsthal. The coins minted at Joachimsthal soon lent their name to other coins of similar size and weight from other places. One such example was a Dutch coin depicting a lion, hence its Dutch name leeuwendaler. The leeuwendaler was authorized to contain 427.16 grains of .75 fine silver, and passed locally for between 36 and 42 stuivers. It was lighter than the large denomination coins then in circulation. Thus it was more advantageous for a Dutch merchant to pay a foreign debt in leeuwendalers, and it became the coin of choice for foreign trade. The leeuwendaler was popular in the Dutch East Indies and in the Dutch New Netherland colony, and circulated throughout the 13 colonies during the 17th and early 18th centuries. It was also popular throughout Eastern Europe, where it led to the current Romanian and Moldovan currency being called leu, among the English-speaking community. The coin came to be popularly known as lion dollar and is the origin of the name dollar. The modern American English pronunciation of dollar is still remarkably close to the 17th century Dutch pronunciation of daler. By analogy with this lion dollar, Spanish pesos with the same weight and shape as the lion dollar came to be known as Spanish dollars. By the mid-18th century, the lion dollar had been replaced by the Spanish dollar. The famous piece of 8, which was distributed widely in the Spanish colonies in the New World and in the Philippines. Eventually, dollar became the name of the first official American currency. Nicknames. The colloquialism, buck, for the pound sterling is often used to refer to dollars of various nations, including the US dollar. This term, dating to the 18th century, may have originated with the colonial leather trade. It may also have originated from a poker term. Greenback is another nickname originally applied specifically to the 19th century demand note dollars created by Abraham Lincoln to finance the costs of the Civil War for the North. The original note was printed in black and green on the back side. It is still used to refer to the US dollar. Other well-known names of the dollar as a whole in denominations include greenmail, green, and dead presidents. A. Grand. Sometimes shortened to simply G, is a common term for the amount of $1,000. The suffix K or K is also commonly used to denote this amount. However, the $1,000 note is no longer in general use. A. Large or stack, it is usually a reference to a multiple of $1,000. The $100 note is nicknamed Benjamin, Benji, Ben, or Franklin, C note, century note, or bill. The $50 note is occasionally called a yardstick or a grant. The $20 note is referred to as a double sawbuck, Jackson, or double eagle. The $10 note is referred to as a sawbuck, 10 spot, or Hamilton. The $5 note as Lincoln, Finn, Fiver, or 5 spot. The infrequently used $2 note is sometimes called Deuce, Tom, or Jefferson. The $1 note as a single, or buck. The dollar has also been referred to as a bone and bones, in plural. The newer designs, with portraits displayed in the main body of the obverse, upon paper color-coded by denomination, are sometimes referred to as big face notes or monopoly money. Piastre was the original French word for the US dollar, used for example in the French text of the Louisiana Purchase. Calling the dollar a piastre is still common among the speakers of Cajun French and New England French. Modern French uses dollar for this unit of currency as well. The term is still used as slang for US dollars in the French-speaking Caribbean islands, most notably Haiti. Dollar sign. The symbol dollar, usually written before the numerical amount, is used for the US dollar. The sign was the result of a late 18th century evolution of the scribal abbreviation, PS, for the peso. The common name for the Spanish dollars that were in wide circulation in the New World from the 16th to the 19th centuries. These Spanish pesos or dollars were minted in Spanish America, namely in Mexico City, Potosí, Bolivia, and Lima, Peru. The P and the S eventually came to be written over each other, giving rise to dollar. Another popular explanation is that it is derived from the Pillars of Hercules on the Spanish coat of arms of the Spanish dollar. These Pillars of Hercules on the silver Spanish dollar coins take the form of two vertical bars and a swinging cloth band in the shape of an S. Yet another explanation suggests that the dollar sign was formed from the capital letters U and S written or printed one on top of the other. This theory, popularized by novelist Ayn Rand in Atlas Shrugged, does not consider the fact that the symbol was already in use before the formation of the United States. History. The American dollar coin was initially based on the value and look of the Spanish dollar or piece of 8, used widely in Spanish America from the 16th to the 19th centuries. The first dollar coins issued by the United States Mint were similar in size and composition to the Spanish dollar, minted in Mexico and Peru. The Spanish, U.S. silver dollars, and later Mexican silver pesos circulated side by side in the United States, and the Spanish dollar and Mexican peso remained legal tender until the Coinage Act of 1857. The coinage of various English colonies also circulated. The lion dollar was popular in the Dutch New Netherland colony, but the lion dollar also circulated throughout the English colonies during the 17th century and early 18th century. Examples circulating in the colonies were usually worn so that the design was not fully distinguishable, thus they were sometimes referred to as dog dollars. The US dollar was first defined by the Coinage Act of 1792, which specified a dollar to be based in the Spanish mill dollar and of 371 grains and 4/16 part of a grain of pure or 416 grains of standard silver, and an eagle to be 247 4/8 of a grain, or 270 grains of gold. The choice of the value 371 grains arose from Alexander Hamilton's decision to base the new American unit on the average weight of a selection of worn Spanish dollars. Hamilton got the Treasury to weigh a sample of Spanish dollars, and the average weight came out to be 371 grains. A new Spanish dollar was usually about 377 grains in weight, and so the new US dollar was at a slight discount in relation to the Spanish dollar. The same Coinage Act also set the value of an eagle at $10, and the dollar at eagle. It called for 90% silver alloy coins in denominations of $1 and dollars. It called for 90% gold alloy coins in denominations of $1 and eagles. The value of gold or silver contained in the dollar was then converted into relative value in the economy for the buying and selling of goods. This allowed the value of things to remain fairly constant over time, except for the influx and outflux of gold and silver in the nation's economy. The early currency of the United States did not exhibit faces of presidents, as is the custom now. Although today, by law, only the portrait of a deceased individual may appear on United States currency. In fact, the newly formed government was against having portraits of leaders on the currency, a practice compared to the policies of European monarchs. The currency as we know it today did not get the faces they currently have until after the early 20th century. Before that, heads, side of coinage used profile faces and striding, seated, and standing figures from Greek and Roman mythology and composite Native Americans. The last coins to be converted to profiles of historic Americans were the dime and the dollar. For articles on the currencies of the colonies and states, see Connecticut pound, Delaware pound, Georgia pound, Maryland pound, Massachusetts pound, New Hampshire pound, New Jersey pound, New York pound, North Carolina pound, Pennsylvania pound, Rhode Island pound, South Carolina pound, and Virginia pound. Continental currency. During the American Revolution, the 13 colonies became independent states. Freed from British monetary regulations, they each issued pound-sterling paper money to pay for military expenses. The Continental Congress also began issuing continental currency, denominated in Spanish dollars. The dollar was valued relative to the states' currencies at the following rates. Continental currency depreciated badly during the war, giving rise to the famous phrase, "not worth the continental." A primary problem was that monetary policy was not coordinated between Congress and the states, which continued to issue bills of credit. Additionally, neither Congress nor the governments of the several states had the will or the means to retire the bills from circulation through taxation or the sale of bonds. The currency was ultimately replaced by the silver dollar at the rate of $1 silver dollar to 1,000 continental dollars. Silver and gold standards. From 1792, when the Mint Act was passed, the dollar was defined as 371.25 grains of silver. The gold coins that were minted were not given any denomination and traded for a market value relative to the congressional standard of the silver dollar. 1834 saw a shift in the gold standard to 23.2 grains, followed by a slight adjustment at 23.22 grains in 1837. In 1862, paper money was issued without the backing of precious metals, due to the Civil War. Silver and gold coins continued to be issued, and in 1878 the link between paper money and coins was reinstated. This disconnection from gold and silver backing also occurred during the War of 1812. The use of paper money not backed by precious metals had also occurred under the Articles of Confederation from 1777 to 1788. With no solid backing and being easily counterfeited, the Continentals quickly lost their value, giving rise to the phrase, "not worth the continental." This was a primary reason for the "no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts" clause in Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. In order to finance the War of 1812, Congress authorized the issuance of Treasury notes, interest-bearing short-term debt that could be used to pay public dues. While they were intended to serve as debt, they did function, to a limited extent, as money. Treasury notes were again printed to help resolve the reduction in public revenues resulting from the Panic of 1837 and the Panic of 1857. as well as to help finance the Mexican-American War and the Civil War. In addition to Treasury notes, in 1861, Congress authorized the Treasury to borrow $50 million in the form of demand notes, which did not bear interest, but could be redeemed on demand for precious metals. However, by December 1861, the Union government's supply of specie was outstripped by demand for redemption and they were forced to suspend redemption temporarily. The following February, Congress passed the Legal Tender Act of 1862, issuing United States notes, which were not redeemable on demand and bore no interest, but were legal tender, meaning that creditors had to accept them at face value for any payment except for public debts and import tariffs. However, silver and gold coins continued to be issued, resulting in the depreciation of the newly printed notes through Gresham's Law. In 1869, Supreme Court ruled in Hepburn v. Griswold that Congress could not require creditors to accept United States notes, but overturned that ruling the next year in the legal tender cases. In 1875, Congress passed the Specie Payment Resumption Act, requiring the Treasury to allow U.S. notes to be redeemed for gold after January 1, 1879. The Treasury ceased to issue United States notes in 1971. The Gold Standard Act of 1900 abandoned the bimetallic standard and defined the dollar as 23.22 grains of gold, equivalent to setting the price of 1 troy ounce of gold at $20.67. Silver coins continued to be issued for circulation until 1964, when all silver was removed from dimes and quarters, and the half-dollar was reduced to 40% silver. Silver half-dollars were last issued for circulation in 1970. Gold coins were confiscated by Executive Order 6102 issued in 1933 by Franklin Roosevelt. The gold standard was changed to 13.71 grains, equivalent to setting the price of 1 troy ounce of gold at $35. This standard persisted until 1968. Between 1968 and 1975, a variety of pegs to gold were put in place, eventually culminating in a sudden end, on August 15, 1971, to the convertibility of dollars to gold later dubbed the Nixon shock. The last peg was $42.22 per ounce before the U.S. dollar was allowed to freely float on currency markets. According to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, the largest note it ever printed was the $100,000 gold certificate, Series 1934. These notes were printed from December 18, 1934, through January 9, 1935, and were issued by the Treasurer of the United States to Federal Reserve banks only against an equal amount of gold bullion held by the Treasury. These notes were used for transactions between Federal Reserve banks and were not circulated among the general public. Brought to you by WikiVidi documentaries. Would you like to know more?